All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. The group that we're going to be talking about and doing is called The Importance of Play. My name is Ashley McLaren, and I'm a parent educator here with the Wentzville School District. This is my 7th school year doing this as an educator. And I just really enjoy working with families and getting to know them and their kids and helping you guys just develop that relationship before you get into the school district. So Barfield Early Childhood and Parents as Teachers partnered together about 6 years ago to start these virtual parent groups. Before COVID, they weren't virtual and we did them in person, but now we've decided to do virtual because it's easy and we can have them recorded for you and we can have the virtual parent group library. So yeah, that's one of the perks, I guess, if there has to be a perk of COVID, that's been one of them, but there is a list of those. So I'm going to share my screen really quick and show you guys how to get to that. So if you go to the Wentzville School District page and you go here at schools, you can go down or you can click at the top here at Barfield Early Childhood. And then there'll be parents, let's see, parent groups. I think that's farther down here. There they are, parent groups. So if you click on that, it'll click you and take you to the virtual parent groups and you can kind of log on there from the Barfield standpoint. And then if we're going to go back to the district page, I can show you really quick how to get to Parents as Teachers. So if you scroll down on the class or schools section, there we are. And you click on that, and then it's going to bring you to our website. So on our website, you can do a couple of things. You can enroll. If you'd like to enroll, you can go to forms, and that'll take you to our enrollment forms. But you also can click on the parent groups and events, and that'll take you to virtual parent groups. Or we just added this nice new tab here that you can click on, and that'll take you right to it as well. And here's a list of what we have so far in our growing library that we've done. So we have things on sleep, joint attention, dyslexia, food wars, all sorts of stuff. So I just wanted to take some time and be able to show you guys that tonight, because sometimes it's hard to know when we're doing these to be able to go back and remember, where do I go or how do I click on things? So that's a great way to start. So like I said, tonight we're going to talk about play. Play is super important for kids. Obviously, that is the main way that they learn. So we'll get started with the PowerPoint here, and it'll kind of help us to go along with what we're going to do. Just a second. There we go. All right. So again, my name is Ashley McLaren, and we will get started. So your child loves to play from the time they're born, and in playing, they're discovering so many things just by interacting with things, seeing what their body can do, learning just all the connections that are made with their brain and their development. So we tend to talk when we come and do our home visits about the different developmental areas. So there's social, cognitive, physical, emotional, and language. And I'm just going to break them down a little bit to give you guys an example of what kind of play in those areas. So for social, it would be when your child is building attachment with you while you're playing with them, playing with others, learning how to share, do some of kind of that stuff. Emotional is expressing themselves through play. So their feelings, getting that self-confidence, and then pretend playing and starting to understand feelings a little bit more. Physical is exploring their body, figuring out their strengths with large muscle and small muscle skills. And then cognitive would be like that pretend play, helping them make sense of their everyday experiences, and then enhancing their play, challenging them as you're working with stuff. And then language is, all that speech and language, talking, learning how to communicate, doing, words, but also like environmental print, recognizing symbols, all that kind of early stage development. So for birth to 12 months, during the first year of your child's life, their brain will double in size, which I just think is so crazy to think about. And most of this growth occurs in the part of the brain called the cerebellum, and that's in charge of the physical development and motor skills. So that's going to help them learn how to control their bodies, their movement. They're going to learn how to hold up their heads, to roll over, to grasp objects, and even to stand up. Also developing is that visual cortex. So that's the part of the brain that helps us see. And when a child's born, it's very interesting how much they can't see. Pretty much for that first year, they really are building that eye muscles and strength up. So, in the first few months, it's very, very blurred vision that they have. And that's why you'll kind of start to see them maybe pay attention a lot to your face, to ceiling fans, some of that big contrast. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. But the last area that develops is that limbic structure, and that's part of the brain that controls emotion, long-term memory, and then helping them become more aware of the world around them. So some activities that we're going to talk about tonight, we'll break it down by each area of age. So to begin, we're going to do birth to 12 months. So one of the activities that we always like to do with our very, very small babies is called an accordion book. So I'm going to try my best to show you guys as we're talking about these. So this is kind of what an accordion book looks like. So it is just a very high contrast pictures with red, black, and white, and they're big, outlines of people's faces. And then on this side, we have a little puppy dog, and we love it because it's super easy. You can make it at home. You can print out some shapes, different things on the computer even. And then you just use a piece of like manila folder or cardboard poster board and kind of put it together. Your kid's going to learn so much from just being able to see the different contrast. And then it's a really great thing to have for working on that tummy time. So when they are on their tummies, you can set this kind of out in front of them. It gives them something to look at. It's safe for them to grab onto. They can kind of pull it apart and push it together. And this is going to be like one of their first experiences with books. And that's such a great thing to start and foster from a really young age. We also have, I should say, on some of our home visits, just some of these black and white books. And you can find those at a lot of different places, but they just have, again, just that big contrast. Like I said before, when babies are on their backs and they're sitting in the living room, a lot of time you'll see them looking up at the ceiling fan. Well, that's because of the, fan blades are darker typically, and your ceiling is white. So they can really see that contrast when it's spinning around. Another thing that's super important with that is when you're feeding your baby. So that interaction with your face. You have a lot of contrast with your mouth and your teeth and your eyes. And so holding that baby close, whether you're breastfeeding or bottle feeding, that's really working those muscles and just developing all those connections as well. Another activity that we talk a lot about in these early stages is tummy time. And tummy time is just so important for development. And I know as a mom myself and working with young families, it's so hard sometimes to get those babies to enjoy that experience because they're just not fond of being on their bellies. They may have acid reflux, and it's always not a great position for them. But trying to find time throughout the day to work on that every day is just wonderful because it helps build that core strength for them. And that's going to help with, things later on and their development as they grow and build. Starting out that core strength is really important. So what we're looking for when we do tummy time activities is just getting down on the floor with your baby, rolling them over on their tummy, getting down on their level, talking with them, laying next to them, encouraging them by, maybe shaking a rattle or two or having that accordion book out in front of them so that they, aren't just laying there with their face in the floor, but that they're wanting to look up because they have things to interact with. And I talk to parents all the time about the fact that it doesn't always have to be on the floor. If you're laying on your couch on your back and you have your baby on your chest and they can still do that with their little neck and head and be able to lift it up and kind of work on that, that's great as well. Because I know sometimes, like I said, some kids just really, really want to fight that tummy time, but it's just so important. And another thing it really helps out with too is to prevent that flatness on the back of their head. It kind of helps that gravity to work on that, head shape and just giving them that strength, like I said, that they're going to use later on. So we'll go to the next one. Let's see. And then another activity that we like to do is called balls in a bowl. And I am doing eggs this time. So this is just a little bowl that you may have like in your kitchen and then putting some eggs in there. And that's a great thing to practice on. It really helps when they get a little bit older and they're starting to get around the 6-month age and they start setting up to put this in front of them. You know, you can kind of prop them up with some pillows or a boppy behind them. Even yourself, you can put them between your legs and have them kind of set up, but putting this out in front of them so that they have to reach in and grab. They may grab the bowl and everything dumps out, and that's exciting. And then you can put it back in, and then they'll do it again, because that cause and effect is one of those, you know, skills that they're learning. So this is a super simple, fun activity, but it works a lot with that strength and connect, you know, building with their hands and grabbing at things, connections between the neurons in the brain when they're doing this activity. The fact that things fall out and then you have to put them back in, and, you know, they feel the different textures. If you have two bowls, you can put out a metal one and you can put out a plastic one or whatever you have. So that's a real fun one that you can also do with young kiddos. And then the last one on here is called a zip top bag book. And we use this a lot with parents just as a way for kids, again, to kind of introduce some reading stuff for them and literacy, get a love of books early on. So I'm going to show you a completed one. So this is one that I have that I've done and used for talking about different body parts. So it's just a bunch of Ziploc bags taped together. So you don't want to tape the side where the zipper is, because you want to be able to get in there and change out the pictures. So you'll just take the 3 or 4 Ziploc bags together like this, get some, you know, painter's tape works great, duct tape. You can staple them together first and then cover that staple up with the tape, and then just be able to have this where you can kind of sort through and change out the picture. So like I said, this one has a bunch of different body parts like eyes and, you know, hands, all the different things, but you could do pictures of your family. You could put pictures in there of things that they really like their pacifier or a ball. They're going to start to recognize and realize that pictures and illustrations stand for something. So it gives them that early literacy concept of, oh, well, that's, you know, I see that. That's something that I see and I play with, and that's a ball. Or if you put pictures of your family, I recognize that person, you know, that's my mom, or that's my dad, that's grandma, or sister, or brother, or grandpa. So that's a really fun one. And it's so nice too to have to take when you're going out, because if you leave this zipper book somewhere, it's not the end of the world. It's just some Ziploc bags. So you can always make more, which I think is always helpful too. All right. And then another big area of development for this age range, which I know it's kind of big, birth to 12 is pretty big gap, is crawling. So I want to spend some time talking about crawling for sure. Crawling is one of the first and longest period of time that your baby will be putting weight through their hands to develop strength and stability at their shoulders. This is important because it allows them to have control of their hands and other skills like feeding themselves, learning how to color later on, being able to play with toys, handwriting in the future, and then being able to get themselves dressed, which I know seems crazy that something so early on in their development would help so much with that. But we went to a training a few years ago, and she talked a lot about crawling and how important that milestone is for these kids to have that core strength. Just like tummy time, it kind of builds. So first it's tummy time, and then it's going to be crawling that helps that core strength develop so that they can later on do some of those things. And they've even had research and found that, you know, if a child struggles with sitting up in their chair and holding their pencil and writing, a lot of times when they go back and talk to parents, that child may not have crawled a bunch. They may have not crawled. They may have gone straight to walking. So hitting that milestone of crawling is really important. It's really good for later development. This next slide talks about crawling some more. So it says how it's considered the first form of independent movement. So when you think about it, it is the first time that they kind of can learn how to move around and get going. So on that, you want to make sure you kind of observe your environment, make sure it's a safe place for them. It helps to enhance their balance system, sensory system, cognition, problem-solving skills, and coordination. So it allows for independent exploration. So at this time, I feel like once they kind of are between 6 and 9 months, usually they kind of start to want to crawl or move around. They kind of get that object permanence. And that's a word that we kind of talk a lot about with visits. And that's where they recognize that things exist, even if they're not still in the room. So you may notice that at this point, once they start getting mobile, they're like, wait a minute, mom's not in here. I'm upset. And not only that, but I figured it out and she's somewhere else and I'm going to go try to find her. So it teaches them the understanding of movement. It builds responsibility for movement and mobility, when they crawl. It provides a foundation for early problem solving skills. It helps the left and the right sides of their bodies work together for improved coordination, and it helps enhance depth perception. And some of these, when I was preparing for this, I didn't really think a lot about until I was kind of going through and, really realizing that left to right body work that requires or is, happening when you're crawling, because you have to move one side and then you move the next. So good ways to get kiddos crawling is just being on the floor with them, engaging with them, enticing them with, different items. You could do the balls in the bowl and put it out a little bit farther so they kind of have to crawl towards it, or giving them, a water bottle with some beans in it so you can shake it and it can be just out of reach and they want to grab it and be able to shake on it. But just enticing them with those kind of toys and things can kind of get them going. And then another thing we talk about sometimes too is just providing them with that resistance that they need when they're starting those early crawling movements or getting up on their knees and their hands. So putting them like against a couch or holding a pillow behind their feet so that they have that resistance. So when they push onto that, they kind of propels them forward and they can kind of build that understanding of rocking back and forth and moving. All right. And then the next step would be walking. So after crawling comes the walking, which that's a super exciting stage too, kind of nerve-wracking when they first begin because they can be pretty wobbly, but it's really fun to see, that development happen of where they start crawling and then they start kind of pulling themselves up in the crib or up to the couch. And then they may get brave and kind of start taking a couple steps, cruising along the couch, and then kind of moving on to being able to just walk in the, by themselves unsupported. So most children begin taking their first steps around 12 months, but that's not for everyone. Some kids may be closer to 14 months and some kids are maybe even after that. Every child really does develop on their own timeline. So all of the parameters that I'm giving you are kind of just average milestones, but that doesn't mean that your child may not do things earlier or do things after. And that's totally okay. Promoting walking, a few things to remember is setting the stage. So when your child starts walking or crawling or pulling up or all three of those things, again, making sure that you're providing them a safe environment, baby proofing that house, looking for things that they can, if they're pulled up to the couch, can they get over to that coffee table and find the cord to the lamp and pull the lamp over? Or can they, get over to the window and reach the blinds? Just things like that. Fireplaces, do we need to put some type of barrier kind of around the hearth for the time being until they can get a little bit stronger? Just kind of getting on their level and looking at things through their eyes and kind of what they can reach really helps with that. It talks about providing support. So giving them a strong foundation, like we talked about earlier with tummy time and then crawling, that's going to give them that core strength that they need to begin walking. Says about going barefoot. So sometimes that kind of helps kids when they're first learning how to walk, like giving them the ability to be flat-footed, to be barefoot, walking around, they can kind of feel the different textures of like the carpet to the kitchen floor. And it just gives them a little bit better grip with their toes to be able to kind of start that walking process. So going barefoot in the beginning kind of helps that along. And then reaching high and low. So as your child starts to move from crawling to pulling up, you may find that they like to cruise, up to the couch and the furniture, but put some things down on the floor that makes them have to like lean down and go down to the floor and then grab that item and then pick it up and then, put it back down so that they have to go up and down. That's going to help with that balance. That's going to help with just overall strength of those muscles and get them used to being able to do those types of skills. And then cruising along. So giving them, again, kind of enticing them along the couch. If they're pulled up to the couch, put a couple of things they really like a little farther down. So they kind of have to move along the couch and cruise instead of just standing in that one spot, giving them that incentive to kind of really start to move along. And then once they start going, they go. All right, so we'll move now to our next age range. This one we're going to talk about is 12 to 24 months. So although their physical growth kind of slows down in the second year of being alive and around, their development will continue at a rapid pace. So they begin to explore boundaries about their world. You really start to see once they start moving and kind of being able to get around, they kind of develop that sense of self, like I can move now, and I want to do this, and I want to go here, and I want to do these things. So that kind of starts to come out a little bit as we get closer and approach that 24-month, 2-year-old range. And then these are some of the things that you can kind of be looking for. So by the end of the second year, they'll probably have reached some of these following developmental milestones. But like I said, every kid's different. So for language, we talk a lot about, just overall language development this age. They're going to start talking, they're going to start saying mama and dada and baba, in that earlier stage. And then as they get a little bit closer, to 2, they're going to start putting maybe those 2-word phrases together. They may say, mama, please, or up, please, or cup, please, or, uh-oh, bye-bye, things like that. So kind of be watching for those. And then some kids, will add even more words, and they may start, saying mommy cup, please, or, daddy cup, please, things like that. They're going to understand about common household objects are for, so they're going to start to recognize, that a spoon is for feeding them, that a telephone, a phone is for calling, and maybe not calling, but being able to know like, oh, that phone, that's important. Like we see that everywhere, that the TV remote, is there, and that controls that TV and makes it come on. Being able to, kind of mimic things. So you may start to see that they recognize that a hairbrush or comb can be used for brushing their hair, and practicing that. They're going to be able to follow simple instructions. So not anything hard, but they may start to, if you say, come over here, or can I have that? Can you give that to me, please? Or no, that they may kind of stop for a minute and may, make them realize, wait, they're saying something and that's to me, and I need to do that. And then they're going to start pointing to objects when they're named. So they may be able to say, if you're reading a book that they've read several times, and you can say, where's the dog? And they'll be able to point to the dog. For physical, they're going to start walking alone. So we kind of were just talking about that. They're going to start being able to start cruising around. They're going to be pulling toys behind them and pushing on wheeled toys. So they may, start to push toys, be able to drag things along, things like that. They're going to maybe stand on their tiptoes sometimes. You may start to notice that. Some kids are really interested in that texture. So like they'll, be flat-footed on the carpet, but when they get to that tile, they may tiptoe a little bit and then come back down on their bottom of their feet. They may start to run at this stage. Once they start walking, it doesn't take long for them to figure out they can go faster. They're going to be kicking a ball, scribbling or coloring on a piece of paper, introducing those crayons at this stage, building a block tower with 4 or more blocks. So just working when you guys are playing with those blocks, practicing stacking them up. And of course, at this age, they're going to want to knock them back down, but then stack them back up so that they can do that again. Cognitive development, they're going to start to sort objects by colors and shapes. So they may start to notice that, oh, well, we have, 2 red balls and we have a blue ball. Well, the red balls go together, but this blue ball doesn't have a match, or, things like that. Being able to just sort, they may start to notice the differences in shapes and having one of those shape sorters where they can push the shapes through. They're going to be climbing up and down on furniture without help. That's kind of unnerving sometimes for, families when they start really moving and they can get up there on that couch, or they can learn to climb onto the chair at the kitchen table. So just watching for things like that. It's good development, but at the same time, it can be a little nerve-wracking when they're trying to do all that on their own. Going up and down the stairs with support. So you may see that they have a big interest in stairs, and they may really want to try to crawl up a few and then kind of come back down. But giving them that support in safe places to be able to do that. Working on, if you have a couple steps in the garage and out of the garage, maybe practicing, with support, holding their hand, doing those 1 or 2 steps, or a step up onto your patio and a step down on your patio. Social emotional help. They're going to be imitating behaviors of others. So they're going to start, mimicking what you're doing. So if you're mopping or you're sweeping or you're vacuuming, they may want to get their play vacuum out and help you, or use the real vacuum. They're going to start make-believe play. So kind of maybe, pretending with animals, or setting up little, places where like the horses are going to go over here and the cows are going to go over here, all that kind of stuff. And then they're going to be playing with other children rather than just playing, right near you. They may kind of start to go, or right near them rather, they're going to start playing. So we call that parallel play when they're at this stage. So that's, playing next to a child. So they may not be interacting, but they're going to be okay with, at the park, if they're both playing right next to each other, that's a comfortable thing for them to do at this time. So some activities for this age range that we're going to go through. The first one is called Chips in a Can. It's one of my favorites because it's super fun to make, and you can kind of personalize it up and make it how you want to make it. So if you have a formula canister or an oatmeal container, anything that's kind of like this and it has a lid that you can take off, that's what we use to make that. So I usually take off the label and cover it with some paper just to make it a little bit more colorful. And then you're going to cut a slit right here in the top. Just make sure it's big enough for whatever chips you're going to use to put through it. And then I always kind of reinforce it with tape so that it holds a little bit longer. But this is such a good developmental skill. First of all, they're going to have to use a lot of motor skills to kind of pick up the chips with their fingers and be able to hold them. So that's perfect. And then the next skill that they're going to learn is they're going to be working cognitively to kind of look at this and see like, okay, how is this going to go in there? So you'll show them, the first time you'll drop it in there, kind of show them how it goes. And then, you'll watch and kind of see if they can do it. So they may try to do it like this, and you'll have to say, well, that doesn't work. You got to move it a little bit. So then you twist it around, and then they'll successfully get it in. And then of course, once they have them all in there, then they're going to want to do it again. So then you'll open the lid and you'll dump it out and you'll start it all over again. But it's a super fun, simple activity that you can really be able to make on the go, take it with you, do it. Take it in the restaurant, have it in the diaper bag, or have it for grandma's house or wherever, just something simple that you can make. And it's real fun to be able to play. You can put stickers on the chips, and the chips I have are just, they're like orange juice ends when you have your frozen orange juice, but I also have some of these little button things too. Just make sure whatever you're using obviously is safe for your child, that they're not going to choke, that it's not too small, and just keeping an eye on them. But like I said, that's a super fun one that we can do. The next one we're going to talk about tonight is parallel talk and self-talk. So this is a lot of just interacting with your child when they're, sitting down and playing with their toys. So parallel talk and self-talk, the difference between them, give me just a minute, I'm going to find my little handout here. Okay, so parallel talk is when you're talking about what your child is doing. So what you're seeing them do. So if your, child's playing with a horse, you're going to be like, oh, your horse is getting a drink, and you're taking your horse over to the fence or the stable and you're putting them away. Self-talk is when you're going to talk about what you're doing. So you're going to say, oh, I have a cow and I'm going to take the cow over here and he's going to go in the barn, things like that. But just giving them that language and narrating their play is so important, because they pick up on it. Even if they're not talking quite yet, they're going to hear you talk and they're going to learn those words. So when that language does come, it's just going to explode, because they've had so much exposure to just hearing about things that they do during the day. I tell parents all the time, like, talk to them as you're getting them dressed. Say, oh, we're going to put on your, we're going to put your sock on first, and then we're going to put on your shoe. We got to put our arms up so we can put our shirt on, things like that. And something I'll mention during this too is we deal a lot with kiddos, and parents like getting concerned, like maybe their child isn't talking, their child isn't saying as much. But at this age range, really, there's two different types of language we look for. So we look for receptive and expressive. So receptive language is that, Johnny can understand if you say, go get your shoes. He can go over and get his shoes. Even if you're not pointing, he can go ahead and go and grab those shoes and bring them over. Or, Susie, go close the door, and she knows how to close the door. So that's that receptive. They understand what's being spoken to them and what kind of things you're asking them to do. And then expressive language is that outwardly expressing and being able to use words and say things. And sometimes kids will have a really, really good receptive language and they can understand a lot of things, but that expressive language just takes a little bit longer to come. So we really encourage families, the more you're talking and narrating and just bringing language into your everyday experiences, the faster, hopefully, that'll kind of develop and you'll start to see that expressive language come. So that's a really, like I said, easy one. You don't have to have much. You can just use the toys that they have and kind of interact with your child. The next one is a sensory box. So it kind of depends on your child. If you have somebody who really likes to put things in their mouth still, this might not be the best activity to do until they get a little bit older. But this is just something that you guys can create together. And I have one here that I can show you as best I can. So this is my bean bin. It's just a container. I like this type of one that has the interlocking because it hooks on and then my beans don't get dumped everywhere when I'm trying to transport them. But a big thing I like to tell parents is save your scoops. Save all the different things, your protein shake scoops, your, if you have laundry detergent, wash it first and then save that one, formula scoops, any of that. And then save a bunch of different containers. So the more types of containers you can have and the different size openings for those containers, the better for your child with this activity, because it's going to work on that muscles and just having control as they use a scoop and they have to scoop it in and then pour it into the container. And it's fun to watch while they play with this because they kind of start to notice like, oh, wait, this lid, I can use the big scoop, but this size container, I may have to use my fingers or use the smaller scoop. You can put spoons in there. I mean, anything that you have. The puff containers are great to save to use for this activity because they can fill it all the way up and then dump it all out. I find that beans really work the best just because they're kind of easy to clean up and you can put a blanket down and kind of dump them back in. So it's not a huge mess. But rice is fun. Bird seed's great. Corn can be fun to play with. Just monitor obviously your child while they're playing with this because we don't want to end up with any of those items in places like our nose or our ears. And that does happen. Kids explore. That's what they're doing. They're learning how to play through all the experiences that they're having. But that's so fun. And you can really extend that even past this age range. I'll take that on visits and I'll hide little foam alphabet letters and I'll have the kids sometimes find their name, or I'll have them find like all the ABCs in there. You can hide little cars or teddy bears or counting bears and they can kind of work with those and scooping them out, lining them up. You can just talk and use that language like we were just talking about while you're playing in the sensory bin and say, oh, you're pouring. I like how you scooped that and dumped it in there. What do those beans feel like? Are they soft? Are they hard? You can really extend that one out in a lot of different ways. And it's pretty simple. You can always do a smaller container, like a shoebox size. If that looks a little too intimidating and too big of a mess, you can start small and always get bigger if you want to. And then the next one we're going to talk about is called tennis ball puzzle. So this one is a fun one for this stage and age and is also pretty easy to create at home. So if you have a muffin tin, you're going to take one like this, just simple, small one that has 6 little spots. And then you're going to take the tennis balls. So when we do this activity at home, we'll bring it in, we'll take out the muffin tin, we'll set it on the floor and we'll kind of dump the balls out and we just watch to see what your child does. So this might be their first ever exposure to a puzzle at this age. So basically we're going to give them 7 balls, but there's only 6 spots. So you're going to watch them kind of fill up the spots. And as they're going, they're having fun. They're finding all the spots that they can put the balls in. And then once they get it all full, they're going to look at this last ball. And it's always interesting to see what kids do. Some kids will like grab a ball, put that ball in, and then they'll be like, well, I still have the ball. Some kids will not, they'll see this extra ball and they'll be like, it doesn't have room, and they'll throw it off to the side. Some kids may dump it all out and try it again, but it's a really fun, easy, simple way to practice those problem solving skills and just to work on that correspondence. So, one-to-one correspondence is a super early math concept that we kind of talk about with our families. And this is exactly what it is. There's a spot there, a spot there. So 1-to-1, and then, oh, wait, we have an extra. So that's where that problem solving comes in. So that's a super fun activity that you can do with your little one too. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, so we're going to move over. We're going to switch over to our 36 months and older stage. So this one, kids are sponges at this age. As they get past the 2-year-old tantrums, past all of that, learning and developing. At 3, they kind of are mastering those skills that they were working so hard on. Of course, there's other skills that they're learning, but they know how to walk now and move, and they can run and they can climb and they can probably maneuver steps okay, kind of on their own, and just all of those things. So they're really, really starting to recognize a lot of higher thinking skills as they're getting a little bit older and out of that toddler stage. So they may start to see familiar colors. They may name colors. It's okay if a kid gets really, interested in one color and tends to call lots of different colors the same thing. Sometimes that happens, but they usually get past that and they start to, be able to name like red and blue and green. They're going to start to sort things. So we've talked a little bit about the sensory bin. So maybe using that at this age and kind of having them sort out the different types of beans, put all these, white beans in this one and the brown beans in this box. They're going to start to be able to kick balls on their own. They're going to be able to throw balls. Hopefully they're going to be able to catch. So, we're not expecting them to catch something little, but like a decent sized soccer ball or beach ball and trap it in between their hands. That skill starts to develop at this time. And then, like I said, they're going to start climbing. So they're going to be able to maneuver those steps around and be able to go up and down kind of more like we do as an adult, where they put one step or one foot on each step. And you may notice that. For fine motor stuff, they're going to be working on lacing, figuring out not tying their shoes, but lacing things, beads onto string. Pipe cleaners and Fruit Loops work great for that. They're going to be practicing holding a pencil and crayon and do some writing and drawing. And then they're also going to be working on using scissors. So that's something we're going to talk about. Social emotionally, they're going to just start to have some control over their emotions a little bit. So they may still kind of have tantrums and get upset, but they're going to be able to kind of start to notice that they're getting upset, or maybe label, I didn't like that, or that makes me mad, I'm angry, or I'm frustrated. And then they're going to interact more with their peers. So at this stage, we kind of start to see that, they're not just playing next to a child and parallel playing, but they may start interacting with that child, and they may, work together at the playground to play and chase each other or do things. Just a big thing to remember at this age, sharing's great. And obviously we want to work towards that and be practicing that, but don't expect sharing to happen all the time at 3. It's just, they're still very, interested in the things that they're interested in, and kind of not self-absorbed. I can't think of a better word, but they're just very focused on themselves and kind of a me mentality. So trying to get them to share all the time is not age appropriate. They'll get there, but starting to introduce that concept is wonderful, but they're not going to be like great at sharing right now at 3. All right. So activities for 36 months and older. One of the big things we talk about a bunch is sorting. So you can sort lots of things. If you have a bunch of change, you can have them sort the coins with you and match the dimes and the pennies and the quarters and the nickels. If you have a button jar at home, they can sort the buttons, let's put all the black buttons over here and all the white buttons over here. Or do we have, square buttons? Do we have some circle buttons? Pom-poms are another great thing. We love pom-poms as parent educators because they're super fun to play with, and they're not a big deal if they get lost. Having, a creamer container or a juice bottle and being able to put the pom-poms in and dump the pom-poms out. I think all kids like that. Even 3-year-olds still play with that activity a lot of times when I bring it for the younger ones. You can sort canned food, like when you go to the store. You can do sort the canned food when you come home. Can you put all the corn in this pile and all the green beans in this pile? They're going to start to recognize the differences. So not only are they going to be able to see, maybe the color difference between things, but they're also going to maybe recognize if there's a size difference. So we talk a lot about the 2 characteristic sorting, where they don't just, like I said, recognize the color, but the size. So I have these little apples that I had made a long time ago, and they're just laminated, but I have different sized ones. So I have like little ones, and then I have like the bigger yellow ones. So, they'd sort out, okay, all the big ones go over here and all the little ones go over there. And then of course I have some red ones and I have some green ones. So that's a great sorting activity, very simple. You can just cut these out of paper and have them at home practice with sorting, not only by the color, but by the size. And then, that kind of works into counting. You can count as you're sorting. Well, how many, small ones do we have? How many big ones do we have? How many little ones do we have? Another way you can sort is with objects. So if you guys have, sometimes you can find these little like counting bears and manipulatives and stuff. I have little muffins and then little muffin tins that I have them sort the right color. But if you don't have something like that, like I said, you could do coins, you could do, trying to think, beads, you could do buttons, socks even, you could have some socks and stuff that you could sort, but a way to kind of challenge some skills for those 3-year-olds and work on that muscle memory for their hands with doing fine motor stuff is using a pair of tongs. So I always encourage moms and dads, don't just have the tongs in the kitchen, buy an extra pair of plastic tongs for your 3-year-old to play with, 2-year-old to work with, because it's really good for that pincher grasp, working on, pinching things and holding even like your pencil. So when they have to pick it up and then they have to drop it down, that's a great, great skill and great way to work and kind of challenge them than just sorting with their hands. So that's a good thing to do. Let's see, was there anything else? Oh, and like I said, that tong work with the tongs kind of helps for that holding a pencil and then scissors later on. All right, let's see. Next is cutting. And this one can always be a little intimidating, even as a mom myself. So I have a parent educator that came and visited us when my youngest was about this age, maybe, just getting ready to turn 3. And I have to always joke about it because I was doing this job already. So I would go into homes all the time and have scissors and take them for my 3-year-old friends to be working on scissor skills, but I myself didn't do it at home with my own child. So when she came into the house with scissors, I was just like, oh, I don't know, I'm not ready for that. And she kind of laughed because she's like, don't you do it with your family? Like, yeah, I do. But, having him work with them is a little unnerving. So scissors are, one of those skills we have to work on for sure. And starting at 3 is a great age. Some really good ways to practice with scissor work. So let's talk about that. First of all, scissors, they're sharp, they're pointy, they can be dangerous. We don't want to let the kids use them all on their own. Sorry, I have misplaced my kids' scissors that I brought. Hold on a second. Let me see. They're in my bag. But, finding a good pair of kid-friendly scissors to work with is a great thing that you need to be having in your home so that they can practice. I tell parents all the time, parents all the time, Play-Doh makes a lot of really good Play-Doh activity sets. And a lot of times you'll find one that has Play-Doh scissors that are all plastic. That's all they are. And they're made to cut Play-Doh. So if you want to start there, that's the best way to do it. You can roll the Play-Doh out into a snake, and then you can just have your child use those scissors and just practice snipping the little pieces off. Once they get kind of comfortable with that and you feel like you're ready, you can introduce, a pair of safety scissors. So these are blunt on the end and they're child size. So they're perfect for your child to use. Some ways to kind of practice that skill when you're there at home with them is craft foam. So if you have any of this, you can pick it up at the store. They sell it in, big sheets of it, but I always cut it down to kind of this size, because when they've worked really hard on snipping that Play-Doh, the next step is for them to work on snipping the craft foam. And all I'm doing is just having them open and close when we're first starting. So not even really cutting, but just making slits into it. So that's a great way to open and close, open and close. We talk to kids all the time when we're working with them about keeping their thumb in this hole and then their other fingers in there. Sometimes it's helpful if you put like a little star, you can use a marker or sticker and tell them, you have to keep the star, the sticker up to the sky so that they get it in that correct hand motion. We'll find sometimes the kids like to flip it. Well, it's not as controlled when they're doing that. Scissors are made to be held like this. So that really helps. And, a lot of this is just that muscle memory of opening and closing and building those muscles. Once they get those muscles worked and practiced and, built with more, they're going to be a lot more successful. And then eventually they'll be able to come over and just cut all the way through. And that's a great skill. That's showing that they've developed that ability to kind of work at it and keep cutting. So then usually when I go, maybe the next time when I go to a house, I'll bring scissors again. And this time we'll practice with straws. So straws are really fun because they pop and kids just think it's wonderful. And usually these little scissors cut with one try, whoop, and they pop right off. So it's kind of funny to watch them as they're cutting them and they fly across the room. They get a kick out of that. So that's a fun way to kind of add something different. And then as they get better and better with those snipping exercises and stuff, Then we're going to introduce some cardstock. So we're going to draw some lines. We make these little hash lines for them to snip again. And then we're going to draw some lines and encourage them to be able to cut all the way up the line and then eventually all the way through the paper. But, again, just working and working and working. The more practice you take and time you take working with your child on those scissor skills, the better they're going to get. And then as they get better and better with that snipping and cutting, we encourage them to start cutting things out. So tracing a simple triangle, a square, a circle onto cardstock is a great way for them to practice, and getting, following the line and getting that item cut all the way out is really going to help them as they get ready to go into school and get a little bit older. All right. The next one we're going to talk about is racket play. So this is a really fun one that we like to do too in homes. I like to bring this in at like winter time when we're all stuck inside and we can't get out and we can't play, but it's super simple. So you're just going to take a paper plate, have 2 of them. Then you're going to see if you have like a paint stick. I did this a few weeks ago and I just used a littler like dessert size plate, and I had 2 big popsicle sticks. So I taped them together in the middle and then taped them on the back. But with these bigger plates, paint sticks from, Home Depot or wherever are great. And you just kind of tape it on the back. So you make a little paddle. So we'll do that real quick so we can show you how to do it. And this is always fun because kids, working on that eye-hand coordination, practicing those skills. I usually let them color the plates first so that they can kind of make it their own. They may be able to, maybe make a letter of their name and kind of recognize that. Or sometimes I'll bring stickers if, we're not quite to that point, we can use stickers. So you're just going to tape it on there like that. And then it's your paddle. And then we're just going to have a balloon. And all you have to do is just use that paddle to hit your balloon up and play racket play. And it's super fun and easy because kids can play and get a lot of energy out, and they're not going to hurt anything. And it's a balloon. So if it bumps something, it's probably not going to break it. And the paddles are made of paper plates, so they're pretty gentle too. And like I said, it's great for working on that. As you're playing with your child, you can use, position words. You can say, oh, well, your balloon's going behind you, or now it's to the side of you, or, oh, it went up, or, oh, it's next to the couch, things like that to kind of help with those position words that they'll need and kind of work on as they get older too. And then, just engaging with them. It gives you guys an opportunity to play something simple. You can, stand there and do it a few times with them, throw it up to them at first, let them be the one to hit it. Then once they get a little bit better with hitting it, then you can hit it back and forth. So it really works on kind of that joint attention skill of being able to take turns and practice, being interactive with someone and, involving both you and your child in an activity. So it's a good one. All right. And then I think this is our last one. So this is about sensory play. So we're just going to talk about sensory stuff a little bit. I mentioned Play-Doh with the scissors. Play-Doh is a great way to kind of introduce your child to different textures. A lot of times I'll make Play-Doh on my visits when I come into the home. And I like to do that a lot of times just because it's fun. You get to, feel the salt and feel the flour and mix it all up, and they get to choose the color, and they have a lot of ownership in making that Play-Doh and creating it. And usually the homemade Play-Doh actually lasts a lot longer than the store-bought stuff. So it's a great way to get them involved. They're using their senses. They're having to kind of practice some of those math skills by helping you measure and pour it in there. Excuse me. And stirring it around. And then, like I said, picking the color. But some other things that you can work with is shaving cream. You can put shaving cream out on the table. If you have a cookie sheet, you can just put shaving cream in that cookie sheet and put like a plastic tablecloth underneath it. Have them practice squishing it in their hands, writing, put some letters out there, or have a letter next to it, like a flashcard, and have them practice writing that. You can, find like those clear page protectors, and you can let stuff in there and put shaving cream on top of that, so then they can do it. Or inside, a Ziploc bag, you can put shaving cream in there and then have that on top of a picture of the letter A or B or whatever, and have them kind of draw through the shaving cream if you want it a little less messy. Water beads are really fun too. So, being able to have those in that different texture of those. Finger painting, that's a great experience for a young kid to be able to touch that paint and to use their fingers and kind of create. I find more and more times now that, sometimes we're forgetting that kind of stuff. We're losing that because we have, so much technology at our fingertips that we're not always getting our hands in that kind of stuff and being able to be real tactile. So we do kind of see, not all the time, but we see kids that, struggle a little bit with sensory sensitivity, and that can be for lots of reasons, but the more access and the more times you allow them to experience with that stuff, the less likely, hopefully, they are to have that sensitivity. They'll be accustomed to it. They won't be, as shocked by it. So cooked spaghetti, we had a stay and play here I guess last week or the week before, and we did cook spaghetti, and that was super fun because that's a really weird texture to be able to play with. And we had dyed it, so it was all different colors. And some of the stuff is better to do outside than inside the house, but just being able to let them play with all those different senses and just feel those different things, and like the Play-Doh, and working those muscles with squeezing things and put them in their hands, and just really getting into that sensory play is great for them. All right, so I think that is my last slide. So I'm going to stop sharing. And then we only have one other participant with us, but I'll open it up to see if we have any questions about any of the stuff we talked about. I was just trying and hoping to give you guys some different ideas of simple things that you could do at home with stuff that you already have. Hopefully, you have a parent educator and you get visits and you can experience that on that end of us coming in the home and helping you with creating some of these. But it's kind of nice to see some of the stuff that you can just put together around the house and help your child with. So finished a little early, but that's okay. I'm a fast talker. But yeah, it's been, it's super important. Just all those areas of development, all the things we kind of discussed, activities to be working on, just all of it builds so much on top of each other. So starting from that young age with the tummy time to, helping with the crawling, that's going to help with the walking, that's then going to help with holding that pencil and being able to cut with scissors. It's crazy how much that all builds on it. So starting them out really strong at the very beginning and just enhancing each age range as they go, and giving them those opportunities is really important. So all right. Well, on that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off of here. Thank you again so much for joining us tonight and for watching and being able to, hopefully take away some activities and ideas. Check out the Parents as Teachers website. We always have a lot of different events going on. We have a calendar there with all of those. Check out Barfield's website if you have an older child and you're interested ever in sending them there. And then, we offer these parent groups pretty much at least once a month. We may kind of break for summer, but then we'll be back at it in the fall. And we have that virtual library where we have all the other ones recorded. So have a great night. Thanks so much.